You're listening to the Men's Intuition Podcast with me, Jeff Ash, certified nutritionist, personal trainer, and intuitive eating coach. Here, I'll provide you with practical and engaging conversations to help you and your family transform your relationship with food and body, all without dieting, restriction, guilt, or shame. All right, and welcome back to another episode. So I wanted to preface this episode with just a little message to explain what it is today, because it's a little bit different than the normal podcast episodes that I record. So this one was a recording from an Instagram live that I did with my good friend and fellow coach, Ian Bickle. He's been on the podcast before, and so you may want to check out some of that other episode if you'd like. It was actually pretty recently. But anyway, we're going to be doing these Instagram lives probably once a week or so, and we may broadcast them also onto Facebook and possibly other platforms. So keep an eye out for those. If you're not following us, you can find me at intuitive.eating.men, and you can find Ian Bickle at Ian_Bickle_coach over on Instagram as well. So we'd love for you to listen in on our conversation that we had today. It's kind of a general conversation about health promoting behaviors, and we got some good questions from some of the people who were listening to it live, and so we did some interaction there, and you may find that helpful. There were some questions about calorie counting, dieting, and some things like that, and so you may find those to be particularly helpful for you as well. So without any further ado, here is our conversation that was recorded live on January 10th over on Instagram. All right. Well, so Jeff Ash, and I run the page intuitive.eating.men on Instagram. And as the name suggests, I promote intuitive eating for men. So it's something that as a nutritionist, personal trainer, and coach, it's an approach to your relationship with food and eating and all of that stuff that I found to be really helpful for people. And unfortunately, it's not as prevalent with men, at least the messaging. And so that's been my goal, is to kind of make it more common, more out there, directing that message at men that intuitive eating is something that they can benefit from also. So, yeah, and I'm based in the U.S., unlike Ian, so we're opposite ends of the world, but still good friends.
Yeah, we've got similar weather at the minute, though, it sounds.
Yeah, it does.
And I am kind of online behavior change coach, and I am currently doing my intuitive eating counseling course as well. So I kind of hugely value the work that kind of more the emotional and psychological side of especially when it comes to diet and change. So we wanted to jump on here with the subject of is a pursuit of weight loss getting in the way of long-term health? What do we do when weight isn't the goal, and what it is we can actually focus on? So I guess if you want to kick off, Jeff, and take it where it's going to go.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because this was a meme that somebody posted on Facebook the other day, and they shared it from somebody else, and it was just that question: when intentional weight loss isn't the goal, how do we take care of our bodies? What are ways that we can take care of our body? And I think that's an important question to ask, especially this time of year when starting a new diet, the new year, new me thing is in full force, and people are probably just getting into their current new year diet and all of that. And usually the focus is on weight loss, and either losing the Christmas pounds or making radical changes and that kind of thing. But in reality, I mean, we both know that long-term weight loss and sustained weight loss can be really, really difficult. It tends to be much harder than actually losing it up front. So what are the things that we can do to take care of ourselves that may not involve intentionally trying to lose weight? Doesn't mean weight loss won't occur. Sometimes it does. And but really the kind of shifting the focus from weight loss being the focal point to, hey, what are things that I can do to take care of my body that are in addition to that?
Yeah, I think as you said, often by exclusively focusing on just health promoting um, things and activities, we're not kind of, I guess, got this kind of ulterior motive there where people are just saying to themselves, yeah, I'm focusing on health, but
Mhm.
sneakily they're just kind of like, there's still that like kind of primary drive to just shrink the body.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you see a lot of times it's oh yeah, I'm doing this or focusing on health promoting behaviors as long as those behaviors are going to result in weight loss. So the and that's a very different mindset than actually saying, okay, I'm going to put weight loss on the back burner. I'm not even going to focus on that. I'm not concerned with that. I'm going to focus my attention on the health promoting behaviors, and then it is to say, okay, I really want to lose weight. That's my goal. What health promoting behaviors can I do to help me do that? And so it may not sound dramatically different, but it really is, especially once you actually start to shift your mindset into that way of thinking.
And we live in such a culture where the body is, I guess, the main focal point, like what the appearance is. It's almost kind of the cultural currency at the moment, and there's so much importance put upon this kind of physical side that people are willing to, sacrifice almost so many other aspects of health.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to kind of try and promote a more well-rounded approach to health, which takes a focus away from just purely what you are as a physical being and more so of like who you are as a physical
Yeah.
being, and recognizing that you've got so many greater qualities rather than just purely how much you weigh and what your physical appearance is and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and a lot of those things, those other aspects, can be really helpful for just improving your overall health and well being as a person. And as an example, I mean, just I guess getting into that topic a little bit, a big one that gets overlooked a lot is sleep. I mean, sleep is this thing that is often minimized. It's becoming I guess lately it seems like more people are talking about the importance of sleep,
Mm.
still in the context of, hey, how can sleeping more help me lose weight better, that kind of thing. But at the same time, it is something that can be very beneficial to our overall health, not just our physical health, but our mental health. Our brain functions better. Our mood is probably going to be better. Our appetite's better regulated. Just all of those things that, numerous aspects of it. And, for myself personally, I can kind of speak to this. I just got diagnosed with sleep apnea toward the end of the year. And so I'm using a CPAP machine now, which has been an interesting experience, putting this thing over my face every night to sleep. And it's forcing air down my airway and into my lungs, and keeping my throat open so that I don't stop breathing at night. Because if I stop breathing 15 or so times a night, or sorry, 15 times or so per hour every night. And so this machine is helping me to do less of that. It's helping me to not snore as much. Well, not snore at all, actually, which has been great for myself, also my wife. So my health promoting behavior of really focusing on sleep is helping my wife too. But yeah, it's interesting to see that. It's still, even though I'm not sleeping as well as I'd like to, and I'm still getting accustomed to it, I can already tell I'm sleeping better. I'm not feeling the need to take a nap every day, which I was before. In the middle of the day, it was just, I had to lay down and take a nap. And so that is an example there of one of those health promoting behaviors that's really worked out well for me. And it's helped to regulate my food intake. It's helped to regulate mood and energy levels. And, I've been able to get more work done because I'm not dragging in the afternoons and feeling like I have to take a nap and all of those kinds of things.
I think this is such an amazing segue we can go down, is because I think people are trying to live in this kind of, in such a way where they expect their body weight to regulate in such a kind of some tight parameters, which is
Mm-hmm.
just purely unrealistic because I mean, I'm going to speak, I know we're intuitive eating for men and we both work with men, but I think men have it in many ways far easier than females because their body changes phenomenally, like especially when children are being brought into the world. And I have myself have a young 20-week-old, so we know that sleep can be dysregulated, which inevitably might mean that you're more tired, your appetite regulation is maybe a little bit out of whack. But I think when people have such an external pressure of like being and doing certain things that is often self-imposed, instead of maybe what I would say is doing their best,
Mm-hmm.
like, within the situation, and maybe, saying like, this is just a certain phase of my life that I'm going through. And I call it like the priority list, and nothing goes out the priority list, just things may slide up and down. And
Mm-hmm.
you can slide that priority list up and down as and when you feel like it, giving the situation that you're in. It doesn't mean that health and wellness goes out the window. But I think if you have this kind of, as I talk with clients, this kind of foundational form of self-care,
Mm-hmm.
and give yourself that like kind of permission to not be perfect.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's hugely beneficial because like in my eyes, good enough is good enough. And it's sometimes people are like, right, I can't get to the gym 5-6 days per week, I'll not go at all. Or I
Mm-hmm.
can't, I'm not getting all of the sleep that I need, so I can't do X, Y, and Z. And it always comes down to the question, well, what are you capable of doing? What can you do?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. That perfectionist mindset. I mean, that's one of those things that we can do for ourselves to help with our take care of ourselves and take care of our body, take care of our mental health and all of those kinds of things. And that's something that gets overlooked too. I mean, that's certainly not something that's fancy and shiny and exciting that you get in a diet book or the latest wellness trend is to, oh yeah, be compassionate towards yourself and don't expect perfection and those kinds of things.
I think we are living in a bit more of a society where like mental health is such like a hot topic, if we can call it that, because
Mm-hmm.
it is such an important thing to have. But there does seem to be like a bit of a dislink between like mental health and dietary intake, as we know, kind of uh, the the biggest like mental health killer is like eating disorders. And I think a lot of people can seemingly just start like some form of weight loss intervention, whether it's intentional or even where it's a byproduct of maybe an illness and things like this,
Mm-hmm.
and it can lead to that kind of like, put two and two together, and it's like, oh, actually I didn't eat for a long time, my body weight changed, and now it's been reinforced by external kind of things that society deem, oh, you're
Yeah.
looking great, you've lost weight. Even myself, if I've noticed somebody's lost weight, my first reaction isn't to compliment them, it's to ask, is everything okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because like, illness, like cancer, all of these horrendous things, is like someone has an eating disorder, but because people take it as face value and they automatically say, well, this has been intentional weight loss, let's give them the badge of honor. Let's tell
Yeah.
them how brave they are and amazing they are. So, like, even myself, even though I've noticed people, if they have changed shape, I will just ask questions out of curiosity more than, um, and if whether it's an intentional diet or whether it's just a byproduct of them doing what we're talking about today, which is just health seeking, of more like being a more health seeking individual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting how that happens, and it's even reinforced from the medical community because, I have my the issues that my wife has had this past year where she lost a significant amount of weight because of illness, There was a doctor who said, you know, well, at least you got something good out of this. And it's just this very negative kind of a comment. It's like, that's not, or you hear these stories about people saying, oh, I wish I had an eating disorder too, or I wish I had that problem where I couldn't eat or would forget to eat and things like that. And it's like reinforcing these negative either behaviors or physical things that are going on in people's bodies, purely because they lost weight, which our society has elevated to be kind of the epitome of what you should be accomplishing. It's like make a lot of money, make sure your body's small, or lose weight. Those are signs of success and signs of a disciplined person in many cases. And it's unfortunate that that's the case because as we know, it's just not it's not a healthy thing for most people. Hey, Tap with Jason.
Hey, man. I'm wondering if Jason is MMA or like
I can
or a dancer.
That could be a dancer. Yep, dancer MMA. I don't see gloves there. I don't see tap shoes either. So
maybe he distributes bathroom things.
Yeah,
there you go. So we don't know. Tell us. Jason, what is with the name
EFT?
EFT, you're going to have to elaborate for me then.
Yeah.
I'm not up to speed. But no, you're absolutely right. So I think like if we are focusing on especially like kind of health promoting properties that, I guess it's more so what would we consider success? Because I think when it comes to the scale, clothes, tape measure, before and after pictures, I think people want to get something. They want to see something. So I guess we've got to maybe go, well, what is success as far as like pursuing this? What ways can we measure success in such a way?
Yeah, that can be a really hard one because you don't have that objective sort of measure. It's like, one of the things that I'll hear from clients is, I'm really feeling better about my breakfast, or I'm really feeling better about my snacks. But it's like it's a very subjective thing. It's like I'm feeling better. I feel like my eating's not as chaotic as it was. It's not 100%, but it's better than it was. And so you don't have that. And I think that's what can be. I think that's one of the allures of dieting too, is that you have that measure that you can look at and say, oh, I've lost X number of pounds. I've lost X number of inches. This kind of thing. And so it can be difficult, but I mean, over time, it's certainly, when you start to be able to identify those other aspects, like your relationship with food, how you're able to sit down and enjoy a meal now, where before you were obsessing about different things. I think those things are just when people start to approach it from that way, they really see the benefits of this other way of approaching their health, where the focus is on these health promoting behaviors and things that we can do, because we have control. We have much more control over the health promoting behaviors that we engage in than we do the changes in our body shape and size. So we can move our body more than we are. Like if we're sedentary, we can, disabilities kind of would be a separate issue. But in general, just kind of the average person who doesn't have anything inhibiting their movement, if they're not moving at all and they start engaging in more movement, that's something they have control over more than whether their body shrinks or gets bigger. Because some people are trying to gain weight, but
I think the universal kind of like, and especially within this industry that we operate, I wouldn't even say within, like we seemingly maybe are for the people who have been chewed up and spat out by that industry. And it's like, right, we need maybe more of a hands-on approach. We need a more counseling setting rather than a kind of, this is about experimental and experience, rather than like these are your numbers, these are your parameters that you need to work in. We're very much about regaining a sense of trust and confidence
Yeah.
and competence again, in regards to, you know, food and things like this. We've got a comment there. See you later, Tap with Jason. Thoughts on the food habituation, eat what you want strategy to remove all restriction on food choice. If I gave myself the option to eat whatever I wanted, I would be the size of a house. So that is like such a misconception, isn't it, Jeff? That people like the fear,
Hmm.
giving themselves that unconditional permission to eat.
Yeah, it really is because, and I think one of the things that a lot of people don't quite latch onto is that the making peace with food, the unconditional permission to eat, food habituation, that's one aspect of intuitive eating, for example. And so if that's the only thing, like it's the only thing you do is give yourself unconditional permission to eat, then you probably would have a problem because, but fortunately for us, the intuitive eating framework is 10 different principles. So within the context of unconditional permission to eat and that food habituation, that kind of thing, we have honoring your hunger, feeling your fullness, satisfaction, coping with your emotions, throwing out the food rules, engaging in movement, gentle nutrition. So we still are applying nutrition principles to the process, all of those kinds of things. And when you bring them all together and work them in together, unconditional permission to eat in the context of hunger and fullness, well, that's, hunger and fullness is what helps you to regulate how much of that food that you're going to eat. The satisfaction part helps you to understand, hey, what foods make me feel good and in what quantities. And then as you start to work through this process, you start to realize, I thought that if I gave myself permission to eat an entire large pizza, that I would just do that every day. And it's like, no, I don't want pizza every day. Nor after I start connecting with my fullness cues and satisfaction, I realize, you know what? 3 pieces of pizza is plenty for me. I don't find any more satisfaction in 4, 5, 6, or 8 than I do in 3. In fact, I don't feel as good later. I actually feel better when I eat 3 instead of 8. And so
Yeah.
you start to shift your mindset. And so when you start to do that, then it all comes together to where the freedom doesn't mean that you're just going to do it. Like, if you're just because a person is single and free to go out and sow their wild oats, it doesn't mean they're just going to go bang every girl in the bar that they meet, right? I mean, they're going to, and some people do, but if your values are such that you're looking for a life partner and stuff, and you want a certain person in your life, and you're looking for certain qualities, you're going to pursue that in that way. And so while you have the freedom to do it, doesn't mean you're going to do it. And so it's the same with food. Just because you're free to eat pizza every day if you want it, doesn't mean you're going to want to do that. Or donuts every day. That doesn't mean you're going to want to eat donuts every day.
I think if we look at things like the neural pathways in terms of like the access to these off-limit foods, there can be a cascade of emotional issues going on around that sort of stuff. Like, always ask the question, well, how are things working out for you now? Is like a case of like you almost fool yourself into cutting everything out only for it to kind of come back and haunt you at a time when you have lost perceived control through external influences. So like the habituation, I call it like emotional conditioning. It's been termed by another group that I love called like emotional fitness. But essentially what we do is retraining these kind of responses. And for people to embrace intuitive eating, you're asking them to do something that they've never done before, which is trust themselves around food. So in many ways, people are more drawn towards certainty because that's how the brain operates. It loves predictability. And like, although these methods never worked, it's somewhere in your head, they did work. because you may be remembering the weight loss, but you're not remembering the binge eating. We look through like some rose tinted glasses at our previous experience, but when you actually maybe sit down and reflect and like go, well, yeah, I did regain all the weight, and actually now I feel worse about myself, because people internalize that as a, you're not good enough, you're a failure, you don't have the willpower or discipline, you are this, that, and the other. And people genuinely do that around food. And it's like, you've got to like respect your body and honor your personal hunger, because we don't know how our clients feel. Like, I know myself through years of experimentation and trial and error. I know what foods satisfy me. I know the longevity that foods. I know if I'm doing a certain activity within a short period of time of eating, what type of foods will suit me better. And this is where like working with a coach or a counselor or whatever really helps you go through that. But conversations like this, tuning into Jeff's podcast, the Men's Intuition podcast, there you go. I got that in there.
You got that plug in there.
Yeah, man. Going to my podcast, not as like active as Jeff, and Jeff's so much like more on topic around these things, is like, well, and with clients, it's very much what we're doing is the what if scenarios, where diets, they have a very much like prescriptive set of boundaries, and many people feel safer doing that sort of thing rather than us giving them principles and frameworks and teaching them to operate within this ever-flowing dynamic. But for me, I'm like, well, what would you rather have? Would you rather be like constantly stuck doing something, whether it's keto, whether it's tracking calories, whether it's clean eating, whether it's fasting, rules, or would you rather actually, in many ways, make up things as you go along, and this is what we call that interoceptive awareness.
Yeah, that's all great stuff, and the coaching can be so helpful in that, to help navigate that. And it kind of brings up this question from Shawshank to Freedom. So if he's still listening, or she, I made that assumption that it's a guy because it's a couple of guys talking, right? Says, okay, makes sense. Well, he actually made a couple of good points. Surely there's a time to optimize portions by not eating the whole tub of ice cream to lose body fat. There must come at some point be a need to restrict. But then he goes on to say, okay, makes sense. So I guess we must have answered some of those questions he had. I'm on a budget. Is there a book or lecture that you'd recommend to help me understand the basics of intuitive eating? So, Jeff's
podcast.
Yeah, I was just about to say that my podcast is basically my goal to provide general information on this topic. It's not personalized, but you can probably connect with some of the things that I talk about there. The people I interview that may be really helpful to you, because I interview a variety of people, from people who work with rock climbers, had an endocrinologist, I've had trauma therapists, I had the former dietitian for the NFL Tennessee Titans.
You had that handsome behavior change coach on as well.
I had this behavior change coach who was a bodybuilder and has found this whole concept to be really beneficial to him. That would be Ian Bickle here.
What a legend.
Yes, the legend Ian Bickle. And so there's lots of ways that you can go about getting help there. I'm also rolling out a course here in the next few weeks, as well as a group for men specifically. Sorry if you're a lady, the group is only for men. The course is for anybody, but it'll walk you through that, and it's designed to be extremely affordable, regardless of what your budget is. So shoot me a DM, or I'll shoot you a DM and let you know about that if you're not listening. But yeah, so there's some great options out there. You can work one-on-one with someone like Ian and get that hand-holding approach and really get all that intensive interaction, or myself. Or these other less of course the intuitive eating book too. I guess that would.
I think for me it would be like first and foremost like exposure. That again, I'll talk about like the brain a lot, because just the brain is like it's what it's all about, and this
Yeah.
is why I delved into like neuro-linguistic programming, and like I love the philosophy of intuitive eating, and the kind of reptilian brain and all of these things. But I think just like gaining that awareness, and like even listening to this discussion, that it's what called like the reticular activating system. So all of a sudden you're just going to be hearing and seeing things like a little bit differently. You buy a new car, all of a sudden you see that car on the road everywhere, and that's just how it works. So essentially coaching, listening to podcasts, reading book is just opening up that neuroplasticity, so you're able to kind of bring in these things that we've got to appreciate. We don't know what we don't know, you know what I mean? Like there's industries and things out there that we have no conceptualization of. So this to a lot of people is just completely new.
Mm-hmm.
And in a world full of diets, for every Jeff and me, for every one of us, there's maybe like 10,000, diet like promoters.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm on the intuitive eating course at the minute, and Evelyn, who is one of the co-authors of the intuitive eating book, she was saying there's like 2,000 intuitive eating counselors in the world.
Yeah.
Now, how many billion people are in the world? So like we're not even
Yeah.
a percent, like we're 0.0001 of a percent of. So it's like, I always say, listen, the responsibility always lies with like the person. We're here, when you're ready to start bridging that gap, but it ultimately needs to be a decision and a commitment from you to go to deny the diet mentality.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's why it's that first principle,
yeah,
because it really is. It's so foundational, and doesn't mean you can't work on the other ones while you're still working through that one. That's what's cool with intuitive eating is the principles aren't. It's not a step. It's not a 10-step program.
yeah.
It's a group of principles, and you can do them in whatever order, and you weave them in out. They come in and out at different times. You may think you have the diet mentality thing knocked and no issue, and then it may sneak back in after comments from somebody, or all kinds of things like that. But
And I think like if we recognize that this like isn't a pass or fail,
right.
this isn't a yes or no, this isn't a win or loss, this is a continuum. And if you adopt this certain philosophy around nutrition and health, that can carry you through life, and you're not like kind of it there's no rigidity around it all, and that's what kind of like almost that rebellious person in you, going back to tap with Jason's questions, was it who asked about like the unconditional permission to eat. No, it was
Mm-hmm.
you, sorry, Shawshank the Freedom. And it is just very much like you think that potentially letting go of all of these things that are giving you this perceived control, that isn't actually true control.
Mm-hmm.
Shawshank's asked there, do you ever recommend tracking calories, even just for a few days, get some sort of idea of how much energy you're taking in, assuming the person wants to lose body fat? So, I mean, I can go first, but like, obviously all of the formulas based on that are like, it's acting as if your body is just this set in out thing, and we have to recognize that there's so many different things that are going on. So metabolism is never fixed, and what we're trying to do is get people to start. Yeah, you can absolutely acknowledge, and we're not denying thermodynamics. Jeff and I, we are certified nutritionists as well, and well versed in the evidence-based side, and we're not
Mm-hmm.
kind of, I think a lot of people may go too far down the kind of more psychological and emotional side and dismiss like actual true evidence based. So when it comes, what we're trying to do is regain trust. And I think when people are asking that question, I always ask, well, is that still like you clinging on to
Mm-hmm.
like those past behaviors? Like in many ways, to move forward, you've got to take a leap of faith. It's very likely that people have had experience tracking calories and they understand the principles of it far greater than me. But like, well, I mean, my history in terms of the level of detail required to take my body to a certain place at a certain time in my life. Whereas, like, I wouldn't say that's a great place to live. And it's like, well, what are you going to do with that information once you know it? How does that translate into real life? What's your thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd point out is that with intuitive eating, the framework is not designed to help you lose weight intentionally. Now, some people do lose weight with intuitive eating. Some people don't. Some people stay the same. Some people gain. It's just so that the framework is not designed for that. It's designed to help you reestablish trust with your body and work on your relationship with food and body image and those kinds of things. But kind of going more back specifically to your question. So within the intuitive eating framework, we wouldn't be counting calories, definitely for the purpose of losing weight. But that said, sometimes with certain people, I may have them give me a 3-day food log when they first start with me, for a few days, and not so much to see how much energy they're taking in, but more to see what does a day of eating look like to them. And then that can help me with some practical advice and that kind of a thing. In some cases, it's possible that maybe finding out that the calorie intake might inform me of that, but I really don't do that with people, because really seeing what a day of eating looks like, I can roughly estimate, if they're in the ballpark as far as eating enough or that kind of a thing. Somebody who's treating somebody for an eating disorder at that restoration level where they're restoring them to body weight or something like that. If they had become very small, they might have them track calories to see, what the days are looking like. But in general, I don't recommend tracking calories for what the reason that Ian just said there. What are you going to do with that information? So let's say you track calories and you say, oh, I'm eating 3,000 calories a day. Oh my gosh, that's way too much. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people throw out this arbitrary number and say, oh, that's way too much. It's like, you don't even understand how much energy your body needs. And the reason we often think it's too much is because our dieting history, we were eating 1,200 calories a day or 2,000 calories a day or 1,700 or whatever. So we remember these numbers in our head. And now we find out, oh my gosh, I'm eating way too much. And then you start to restrict. And so it usually is not going to be helpful. The same thing too, what Ian was saying, your metabolism isn't static, and our bodies, while calories in and calories out at a mechanistic level is a thing, and it describes the way the body functions, it's not a static thing. So the variables on the input side and the output side are not independent of each other. If you eat more, often the output side goes up. If you eat less, often the output side goes down. And these are at the subconscious level of that non-exercise activity energy that we expend. And so when you start to see, oh, okay, I'm eating this much, this many calories, I'm going to cut off this many to get to this goal that I want to get to, it often has downstream effects that we're unaware of, either driving the binge eating or overeating or late night eating. It can impact your sleep, sex drive, all these other things. And so anyway, my whole point in that is it's a far more complex thing. And that's why tracking calories, for people who have a very specific weight management goal, it can be helpful, but long-term is really the question. And it just doesn't seem to work long-term for most people. And, you're going to hear somebody say, oh, well, it worked for me and blah, blah, blah. And that's true. That's fine. There are the exceptions. There's the outliers, but in general, it just doesn't work very well.
Yeah, we've got like different things, like people will regulate calories different. People have different kind of settling points where like their body just seemingly prefers to be, and that's kind of what we're trying to more so discover, rather than having like these external things take over, like what should be an internally driven decision.
Mhm.
Like being awareness, helped me. So this awareness helped me to become more mindful of portions and consider whether I actually needed such a large size breakfast. I was able to downsize my portion. And again, this is the thing, that this interoceptive awareness and using, listen, I think all of us here, Jeff as well, correct us if I'm wrong, has had experience with tracking calories, and
Mhm.
it's been part of the journey, and we're helping people where it no longer serves. So the likelihood is when people come to us, people have done all of the diets, people have done
Mhm.
numerous things, and it's not a starting point for me, and it's very unlikely that we're going to meet someone. And I think in all my time, one client probably I worked with last year, he was like, you know what, Ian, I don't want to go down any diet rabbit holes. Like, I haven't done anything. I just want to do it right from the off. And I'm like, I wish everyone was like you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I have one
unfortunately,
like that too. I have
yeah,
one, a college kid. He's like, yeah, I never dieted.
I don't
Don't
want
care
to.
if I lose any weight or not. He's like, I'm cool with how I just want to be stronger. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's been cool. It's fun.
And that's the thing, we've got that experience, of course, and this is about like moving forward and having a bit of a clean slate, but you still have all of that experience
Hmm.
behind you. You're still in many ways calorie aware, but you may be looking ahead at, not just the day but the following days, maybe also looking backwards, and that can help you dictate whether, hey, actually, is a 1200 calorie, like, is that size of a portion something that's going to be beneficial? For example,
Hmm.
when I've done the Great North Run, or when I did that ultra marathon thing, which was like, my Fitbit told us like 86,000 steps. And I'm like, you know what? Like a 1200 calorie breakfast it wouldn't even touch the side. So there's
Yeah.
so much like nuance that goes into determining like what is suitable. So when you are like, when your macros and calories are set, what a lot of people do, it's like, well, okay, your allowance is X, but what if you're
Hmm.
hungry? And
Yeah.
you now start operating outside the parameters of what's being told. And then people, unfortunately, are very like binary thinkers. They're just like all or nothing. And it's like, right, I have broken these rules.
Yeah.
And this is where like emotional and binge eating comes in. And like for us, it's like to serve people on more of a psychological perspective, to not get them doing disordered eating or having disordered traits, and feeling that they have the flexibility and freedom to make choices that will ultimately benefit them in the long term. And it's again, for me, it's about that word trust. Trust is so important. And I think from my experience, what I've seen, that people who are chronically counting calories, not counting calories, then using calorie counting as a means of regulating behaviors,
Hmm.
only for it to not work because it's not appropriate for them. And then obviously the whole of December would have been like, well, I'll get back to it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but if you do that over years, you're just another yo-yo diet. I don't care how evidence-based thermodynamics are. Um, and the thing is, you are going to get reinforced because it's such a thing now,
Hmm.
which a lot of practitioners, coaches, like businesses really depend on. It's like macros and calories
Oh
and
yeah.
things like that. And I think like you're going to have a hard time for them to almost backpedal a little bit and go, oh yeah, actually, I found that clients were only successful when they were on said system, rather
Hmm.
than like, for me, success is people working with me, going away and like living the best life. And then
Hmm.
like, even if there is weight gain, it's not framed as unsuccessful.
Yeah.
It's the internal workings that we care more about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the calorie thing is just such a problematic topic. And um, and Shawshank to Freedom, that you added a couple other comments, and I think that this is really it really illustrates kind of what we're talking about here, because you said didn't need such a massive portion in a meal. It was literally a 1,200 calorie breakfast. Then you said this awareness helped me to become more mindful of portions and consider whether I actually needed such a huge breakfast. I was able to downsize a portion and still feel satisfied. And then you talked about how it sounds like calorie tracking could have its place just for a few days to get awareness, which may be helpful, but tracking isn't a way to live full time. So it kind of brought up some interesting things here, because you're using this number, 1,200 calorie and massive, together. So you are associating 1,200 calories as being a massive amount of food. And what can happen is that connection that Ian was talking about, where you're connecting with your body and what it needs, and the variations and the fluctuations in how your body is working. When you start thinking 1,200 calories is massive, 1,200 calories is too much, I shouldn't be eating that much, I need to find a way to eat less than 1,200 calories. That's where calorie tracking really it gets in the way. And it's because you might be hungry enough and you might be engaged in something that requires that much energy, but you have it in your mind that's too much. And so then you force yourself to eat less. Or like in this case, you said you had a 1,200 calorie breakfast, and you may say, oh, I can't be eating that much for breakfast. I need to keep my breakfast to whatever number. I'm not even going to put one out there because I don't want that to get in your head. But let's just say it's a significantly lower number. But what if that doesn't fuel you well enough throughout the day? And what if you talk yourself into thinking, yeah, you know what? I was satisfied with that. I was satisfied with that little Greek yogurt and the banana that I had. And it's really easy. That's a lot of what happens during dieting, is we try and trick ourselves or convince ourselves that something is so, instead of actually really tuning in, getting curious and saying, is this really enough? Like, is a Greek yogurt and a banana enough for me for breakfast? Maybe it is. Cool. But maybe it's not. Or maybe it sustains you for an hour, but then you find yourself really hungry again. And so all of these kinds of things, this is where counting calories can be very problematic, and even doing it for a few days. And I personally don't recommend people counting calories. Like I said, I'll often, with a new client, have them give me just kind of write down what they're eating, and I might calculate it in my head to kind of come up with, oh wow, they're eating about half of what their body needs, just in the general sense. But I don't like having that number for the exact reason that you've kind of illustrated here in your questions, is that I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, oh, that's a better option because it's only 400 calories, or it's only X number of calories, or, oh, that one's way too much. That's way too many calories. And then we start to, again, this is where all of the principles of intuitive eating come into play. When we start to do that, we start to deny our hunger. We're not honoring it. We start to not truly feel and recognize our fullness, and what amounts are satisfying and what foods are satisfying, and all of those kinds of things. And it just starts to interfere with the whole process. So especially if you are committed to kind of incorporating the principles of intuitive eating, calorie tracking just totally gets in the way of that. There's exceptions. There's elite athletes. There's certain performance levels that maybe counting calories is going to be important. That's a whole other thing. That's kind of the exception more than the general rule for the average person. But I thought that was important. Some important points to make with calories.
And I think like the question always comes to like, well, what are your goals? I mean, and where are you starting from? Because like, I think one of the main concerns is around like intuitive eating is like, I guess people are just going, oh, well, that's what I've been doing. I've just been eating based off of my feelings. And like one of the principles is, well, coping with emotions with kindness and essentially not with food, and not eating your feelings and using them to mask. It's actually to like work on, well, what's going on. And to the body, it's like to the brain, if we are feeling a certain thing and we use food as a coping mechanism, the brain goes, so when I feel a certain way and I use this as a vehicle for changing state,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use that again because like I felt in danger. Now I'm safe. I've got all of that rush of like, all the chemicals that do that. And then you built something and this is what binge eaters do emotionally is, they're not dealing with the issue and it can feel very uncomfortable to not use the usual release. But what we want to do is get people to understand that without food, without using food as that vehicle for a state change, they they are safe,
Mm-hmm.
and then it kind of like, and this is where a lot of people think putting things out is the necessary kind of option because they have built this huge amount of anxiety around certain things, certain situations. Therefore, in their way, in their head, it's easier to use complete avoidance, whether it's not
Mm-hmm.
having the food in the house or never not being in a certain situation. So, and this is where tracking calories really falls down because it creates such a marginalized way of thinking. It's like
Mm-hmm.
now you're operating within this kind of like within these tight parameters. What if you're going out and you can't track your calories? It's like this is where a load of people go, oh well, it's the what the hell effect. you
Yeah,
know
exactly.
I call it something else, but we might have young ears listening.
Yeah.
But the what the hell effect. It's like, oh well, if I can't do this perfectly, then I shouldn't do it at all. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, surely you've jumped from one extreme to the other there. Where's the gray area with all of this? And maybe from an experiential point of view, 1,200 calories for breakfast, or the portion felt was maybe too much, but it could be like, well, if you're a busy person working all day and maybe only during the day you've got an opportunity to graze, then that first meal could be essentially the only meal that you derive a great deal of satisfaction on until your
Mm-hmm.
evening meal, because we want to be fully attuned with the eating experience as well.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like there's so much context. So don't like approach anything with like judgmental thoughts that this diet culture often kind of gives people, like this is right, this is wrong, you're going to get opinions. The most important opinion is your own. So as coaches, our job is to essentially ask questions. It isn't to necessarily give hard fast directions. And this is why like it's a framework and it's an individual experience that you're going to go through. Therefore, like approach it with a curious and exploratory mindset rather than a judgmental one. Again, it's not pass or fail. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Learn, move on, treat it as practice and conditioning, just
Mm-hmm.
as you would your fitness. The more you do it, the easier it'll become, rather than just kind of trying it, dipping your toe in, getting a bit uncomfortable, going back to what you've always done. That to me isn't like a commitment. A commitment is like, right, yeah, I've got to kind of go all in on this and like embrace the perceived failures and frustrating elements along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, that it's just so important to come at it with that mindset, that approach, that curiosity, and um, he made another comment here about, to give a little context, breakfast was his lightest meal. So he talked about the what he felt like was a massive meal, but that breakfast was his lightest meal, and that he'd eat more for lunch and dinner, and was taking in 3,500 calories or more a day, and not moving that much. So and felt like he was gaining weight. So optimizing portions uh, helped helped me to, must have been, stop the fat gain. I feel and look good for doing it, but maybe it wasn't the healthiest way to do it. So yeah, and really it comes back to the individual. I mean, if something works for you, cool. That's cool. And that's one of the things that I try and be really careful about is if somebody has counted calories and they're in a place and they feel good about their relationship with food and their body and they're feeling good, cool, good, awesome. But for most people, it doesn't seem to work out that way. And here, and the example that you gave here, where breakfast was your lightest, this really points to one of the strengths of like intuitive eating and this other way of approaching your health, where it's based around curiosity and behavior change and those kinds of things. And that's if you eat a breakfast that's larger than normal and you're connected with and tuned into your body's appetite regulation signals, hunger, fullness, satiety, satisfaction, all of those kinds of things, your body tends to adjust for that. So if you eat more in the morning, your body is probably going to ask for, in the sense of driving your hunger, less food at subsequent meals because it has that energy. So your body, that's something that I don't think people quite realize is when you eat a bigger breakfast, if you're really connected in with your hunger and fullness, you're not going to eat as much over the course of the day. If you're honoring those signals. If you're not, then yeah, you can. And likewise, if you eat less, your body's going to drive you in a much stronger way later in the day to make up for that energy, that deficit of energy, since you didn't eat as much during the day. And that's often what drives those late night snacking or binges or these other kinds of things that may not be serving you well. And so that was actually, that comment there just really illustrated that concept very well. And I wanted to make sure that point was made because, yeah, your body does a great job of accounting for the food that you take in.
I think we're all born with like intuition and instinct, but over the course of life, as we are gaining, like, I guess we're losing that connection, and we're now getting things like thoughts and beliefs that are just getting in the way of that. So people are like afraid to let go, and that is like, I guess one of the biggest things that we're trying to get across to people is like, I don't feel like people should be constantly like on and off a diet and have these rules. And I think like just paying attention to just diet culture and the amount of, comments from other people regarding like what they're eating, what other people are eating, on people in regards to their size and shape and things like that. And like just creating a general awareness and like using, Jeff's podcast, subscribing to both our accounts, subscribing to other people's accounts, unfollowing certain accounts that maybe don't align with like who you want to be, because all of this information goes somewhere. It is impacting you, whether you kind of admit it or not, and that's just how the body and the brain works. So it's about creating a bit of a culture for yourself.
Yeah.
And again, what we do like is nothing in comparison against like what is like mainstream. So like the magazines, social media, what's on TV, all of these sorts of things, you have to kind of almost go against the social norms if you want true long-term freedom. And this is why like it's called like a superpower, isn't it, Jeff? Like this interoceptive awareness, to be like in this constant state of presence and consciousness, to be well attuned to all of the kind of variable that's going on, and still being still and calm rather than reactive and overcome by anxiety. And by the way, like anxiety, stress, these are normal. We're not trying to get rid of these. We're trying to get like for people to understand them, because this is just how the body works, and it's there to protect us in many ways. You're standing on the edge of a cliff. It's kind of anxiety that kind of keeps you back. But that creates like problems when they've attached such anxiety to things that really there is no danger of like life-threatening danger there. So we have to go, is this anxiety a helpful or an unhelpful form, and then we have to maybe work through that in order to come out the other side? Is it like debilitating? And this is like, what's this, curveball, and don't expect medical advice. Well, we can't give it. But any thoughts on taking TRT 40 to 50? Always consider, I think, like medication. I think Dr. Nadolsky did like a short video talking about like weight loss medication. And I'm always just saying, like, this has to be a person-centered approach. Like, it has to be about you, not being bothered about what other people think. And I think when it comes to things like weight loss medication, there's going to be a lot of stigma around that because it's cheating and TRT. And it's like, well, if things are having such a negative impact on your life, you get into a certain chapter in your life where natural testosterone levels are dipping. Well, we're just renormalizing that. Same with like obesity, who like, hormonally, they're not getting the same appetite regulations as like a normal person would have. Then all that's happening is that's just bringing people up to like baseline. So for me, I just think like, well, if it came to myself personally, I would be like, right, yeah, but I'm not going to be like, it's not like being a roid head and taking above the means just to kind of like look or get a certain outcome. It would just to be like, is this having a positive quality on my impact on my life? Would it allow me to chase after my kids and grandkids for longer? Would it allow me to move in such a way, continue to lift weights, to be super energized? Well, for me, just because someone goes, oh, it's cheating, I feel like, wait, it's off. Like,
well, medication to make your body function optimally, and not optimally from a performance enhancement standpoint, but just to function right. If something is low, if your blood sugar is dysregulated and you're taking metformin to help with that, then great. If your testosterone is at a level that is impacting your mood, your energy levels, your sexual function, whatever the case may be, then depression, then that may be an option. I mean, the main thing here is the only advice I'll give you on this is talk to an endocrinologist. Avoid the men's tea clinic kinds of places, because they are geared. They're, without casting a broad net, a lot of them are geared at getting people, finding a way to put you on the TRT. So the way that they'll test your blood later in the day, and all of these different kinds of things. But see an endocrinologist. They're the ones who specialize in hormonal things, and they're the ones that can actually look at this, tying it in with intuitive eating. They're the ones that are going to help you look at the root cause. So if you have low testosterone is not just a condition. It's a symptom of something else. So you may have some kind of other thing going on in your body that needs to be addressed, that just jacking up your hormone, your testosterone number, isn't going to help. You may have, let's say you have some kind of a tumor somewhere that's causing a testosterone to be low, or you're having an issue with your testicles and your testosterone is low because of that. Wouldn't it be better to address the underlying issue than to mask it? Same thing with intuitive eating and with dieting. Is dieting often is used as this way to improve body image and to improve your health and all of these kinds of things, when in reality, it's more of a masking effect. If you are struggling with binge eating, calorie counting and giving yourself this tight window to sit in so you don't binge eat isn't going to fix the binge eating problem. Figure out what's at the root, address that, and kind of move on. The same with TRT. If you've got, just like with anything, if your hormones need regulated, women, if you need estrogen or whatever, of course, these are all conversations to have with your doctor, but that general principle, I think, is a good one to take. What's the underlying reason? And avoid the Big Guns R Us clinic next door to Venice Gold Gym. You got it right. Yeah. Avoid that place. If Big Guns R Us is listening, yeah, we're talking to you. Yeah,
we're not taking that sponsorship.
Yeah.
And I think like if we want to just kind of start to close out a little bit here, because I love these things because they go on big
Yeah.
segues. Next time, what I'd love to do is jump on here again with Jeff, but also like I'll likely record it on Zoom and we'll stream it to Facebook as well, and maybe release this as a podcast of sorts as well. So if people are listening on the go and they just want the audio to catch up, I don't know if you'd be happy with that as well, Jeff.
Yeah, I was already thinking of that. I thought, hey, this was a good conversation. I might repurpose it for for a podcast episode, since I know you wouldn't mind. So,
Oh
hey,
no, absolutely.
put it on both our podcasts and
I think,
repurpose the content.
well, I think like conversations like this, and this is the thing, very conversational, and like thank you, Shawshank to Freedom, and thank you for your input. So yeah, make sure you follow Jeff, make sure you follow myself, check out Jeff's podcast, which I'm sure is in his bio. My stuff is in my bio as well. I'm sure we've all got free stuff that you can go away and get and grab. But our DMs are always open if you've got questions. But no, it's always an honor to talk to you, and we'll do this again maybe next week.
Anytime. Yep. Anytime.